Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of 5 Facts. I'm Tony Southcott, and the movie we're going to be talking about today is Videodrome. Videodrome is an 80s classic made by David Cronenberg. It's about a sleazy cable TV producer who ends up finding, through kind of nefarious methods, a different type of video project known as Videodrome. Basically, once he has this, he starts seeing the effects completely change his life. This particular type of video can alter your body, provide different types of organs, ultimately kill you, or it can even program you to do things that you don't want to do. It's a major leap forward in the technology at the time, and it's particularly a scary thing whenever you start thinking about what could be done if the media could influence you that much. Anyway, we're going to get right to the facts. Fact number 1, the idea for Civic TV was based on a real television station. The TV station this was based on was out of Toronto, and it was called City TV. They were particularly notorious for showing softcore pornography, hardcore violence, and a lot of other things that normal TV couldn't get away with at the time. It was a very different type of TV, and people hadn't really seen it before. Essentially, they were exploiting the whole if it bleeds, it leads type strategy. They knew people wanted this content, and they knew that they would have a market for it. They looked at it as sort of an outlet for this. Another little fact about this, a lot of the shorts that you see on the Civic TV station are actually short films that were filmed by the crew for this, such as like the porno was this certain samurai movie that they decided to come up with. It's interesting, but you don't get to see the whole thing. Fact number 2, the special effects required the use of Betamax tapes instead of VHS. The videotapes used in this film are actually Betamax instead of VHS, despite being a much more widely used platform. The reason for this is that they needed the video cassettes to be a little bit smaller for some of the special effects scenes. These particular special effects scenes get very graphic and, some would say, a little bit, sexual? Basically, people get a giant gash right here that looks like it could be vaginal, that opens up and you can either pull guns out, you can put videos in, you can do all sorts of insane things with this little pocket that gets put into you through the Videodrome. It's a really strange part of the movie, very uncomfortable. James Woods said that he would never do a movie like this again where they had to glue a secondary body to him, and it was a lot of really interesting special effects that went into this. That brings us to our next bit about special effects. Fact number 3, the television was actually controlled by a modified synthesizer. One of the most notorious parts of this movie is when the television is coming alive. It's not just that you see the screen moving out or anything like that. It's that you literally see it pulsing. You see veins pulsing through the skin of it. And this particular effect took a very long time to make. It was more than just having somebody in there pushing things. It was actually a synthesizer that was set up to cause all sorts of different things whenever different keys were pressed. They were all set up with different air compressed effects. Some would make things bulge out, some would make it so that it would sort of breathe. And this was all controlled by Frank Serrer, who was one of the people under Rick Baker who ended up heading up the special effects for this movie. It took him more than a month to figure out how to get this to work. Frank Serrer basically spent his nights, after doing 12 hours of working on the set of this, trying to get this TV to work. They also had to spend a lot of time making the TV, where you had to make these perfect molds of an old school TV out of a sort of latex. They were able to achieve the look of the screen working by using the same material as a dental dam, putting a projector in the back, and putting that through in a compressed environment so you could push air into it, make it pulse, make it move, make James Wood able to put his head into the TV. Fact number 4, the script wasn't finished at the time of filming. In Canada, making movies is a bit more regimented, especially because a lot of the money actually comes from the Canadian government. You have 1 full year to basically get your movie done. When this movie started filming, it was in late August, and they had to make sure that every single thing was done by December. Whenever the filming started, David Cronenberg actually hadn't finished the movie yet, and was just kind of winging certain scenes. There were a lot of times where he changed things, cut scenes, and generally made the film more his vision as it went. He had a lot of different ideas on what he wanted from it, but wasn't sure how to end it. James Woods actually came up with the idea that was used at the very end of the film. On a side note, I found out that David Cronenberg only writes at night, and usually writes things about dreams and nightmares that he's had. That explains the strange, dreamlike quality that he has with all of his movies and all the effects that kind of go in it. Whenever you just, you look down at a normal conversation and see a hand bulging or changing into different things. It definitely feels like a dream when you're watching this. Fact number 5. Debbie Harry was more well known for headlining Blondie than she was for acting. This movie is particularly interesting for her because this is the first time she's breaking out of that role as Blondie. She actually dyed her trademark hair from bright blonde to red, and this one kind of gave her a little bit more range to act as she wanted to. Debbie Harry actually is still acting and still on the road with Blondie, occasionally doing tours and creating new music. She might not have become a huge movie star, but she's making a lot of TV shows, a lot of smaller roles in films, and has basically been hustling even today. Videodrome is a flat-out different kind of movie. It's not something that a lot of people just off the shelf could enjoy. You have to be willing to dig into some subtext for it. You have to be able to get through some of the more hardcore special effects. While this isn't a problem for veteran horror fans, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who are going to be so distracted by the violence and the things happening on screen that they're not picking up the subtext here. They're also not seeing the types of things that this movie was able to help predict. Cronenberg was able to see some things coming. He can't, like, this movie actually analyzed the idea of a viral video, something that's spreading and actually entering the cultural zeitgeist. Some people say that he was also able to come up with the idea of the internet, or at least a basic idea for it. I don't give it quite that much credit, but it does give the idea of how interactive media was going to be in the future. It's a movie that is brutal and nightmarish, and it has a lot of vagaries between what's real and what isn't. We see that a lot in these types of horror movies because perception and reality are so often intermingled whenever you're talking about horror. More than all this, it's a criticism of modern television, especially in the 80s, where people were blaming television for violence, for basically controlling people. And in some ways it does, some ways it doesn't. It's looking at the news and the media and showing how it can coerce people into doing things. It's looking at how the perception of reality can change based on what you're looking at. It really is a movie to be experienced, not just watched. It's one of the probably better ones I've seen this year, but it also has some issues with aging. Not because the special effects aren't incredible, but it's just a different time, like a very different time in what people valued socially, and just the way film was made. It's still David Cronenberg, so you know you're going to be getting some fantastic angles, some really interesting characters, and some one-of-a-kind scripts. But I could see a lot of people who are used to the 2017 style of movie having a little bit of trouble with this one. I would highly recommend it. Just want to say thank you to everybody who's been watching these, liking these, sharing these, and subscribing to the channel. If you liked it, be sure to hit that subscribe button, share it with your friends. Also, check out the Human Echoes podcast. We put out a lot of really awesome content over there for a lot of movies you might have seen, a lot of movies you haven't seen, and just basically have lots of fun and weird conversations. So be sure to check that out. Once again, I'm Tony Southcott. Hope you have an awesome day.